Hi, my name is Nicholas Bernard. I am the schedule supervisor slash labor analyst at Boomtown Casino, and today, for the last part of my presentation, I would like to speak about workforce planning, what it is and what it can do in the business world for individual firms. Workforce planning, in the business world, there's two ways that a business can increase their bottom line. Of course, they could generate more revenue, sell more product, bring in more customers. That's the easy way to do it. The other way to do it, it's a little bit more difficult, is to minimize expenses. Now, obviously, certain expenses you can't cut. You know, if you're a restaurant, you got to pay your rent or your lease on your building, insurance, expenses that don't really vary very much. You can't change them, you can't cut them, you can't minimize them any more than what they already are. So the most controllable expense, the easiest expense for a business to reduce, is its labor cost, the cost of its employees, how many people they're bringing in to work, etc. Obviously, if a firm hires more people and they put more people on the floor to work, it's going to cost them more money. If they let people go, send people home, they can save money there, but it's a little bit of a sliding scale. If you have more people, you can run a stronger operation if you're willing to pay for it. You can always cut down, run with a smaller workforce, and then you're kind of running the risk of compromising your operation a little bit. So what workforce planning focuses on is finding what should that labor cost be. How much labor should we be running for every dollar in sales, or every plate of food a restaurant sells, or every shirt a retail outlet sells. To define workforce planning, Webster's Dictionary defines it as the systematic identification and analysis of what an organization is going to need in terms of the size, type, and quality of workforce to achieve its objectives. It determines what mix of experience, knowledge, and skills are required, and it sequences steps to get the right number of people in the right places at the right time. That is the Merriam-Webster definition of workforce planning, and that just about hits the nail on the head. So obviously the biggest factor when it comes to workforce planning is scheduling. This is, my cup of tea. This is what I do on a daily basis. Scheduling employees is it's the nuts and bolts of workforce planning. Getting people into work at the right time, sending them home at the right times. It means everything. If you optimize your expenses by bringing employees in when you need them and sending them home when you don't. Spending more labor dollars isn't necessarily a bad thing if it means you are bringing in more revenue on the flip side to accommodate that. So it's all about finding what that efficiency level is and sticking with it. So in order to determine that perfect schedule, there's obviously some in-depth analysis that goes into that, some very detailed analysis. Now, you may need to dig into your operation a little bit and figure, what are my employees doing? What does a cook in the kitchen do besides just cook the orders when they come in? Obviously, there's prep work that needs to be done on the front end of the shift. There may be some cleanup that needs to be done on the back end. And there could be varying tasks in between, too. So as a manager, you need to kind of know what your employees are doing, how much it takes to do each task, so that you can kind of figure out what that metric is. Where if we have, if we're a restaurant, we have 8 people come in, how many cooks is it going to take to serve those 8 people? A little bit more macro of a view of it is this week we're expecting to do $30,000 in sales. How are we going to cover that in the operation? Do we need to bring in more people? Do we need to bring people in at certain times? Maybe you just want to focus on that dinner crowd if you're a restaurant. Maybe you don't need them so much at the breakfast times. Maybe you can get by with 1 or 2 cooks and maybe bring in some of those guys later in the evening for the dinner rush. So it's a very in-depth analysis. You got to be really in tune with what your organization's doing, what all is going on. And you have to, as part of this analysis, you have to know what's going on in your market. What are your peak times? how is your market trending? Is the restaurant business growing year over year, where this year we're doing this much, next year we're going to have to do this much more? Because obviously as the business grows, the labor is going to have to grow with that. So another part of the forecast of the analysis process is forecasting, projecting what's going to happen and adjusting that forecasting process as you move forward. So once you have your perfect schedule, or what you think is the perfect schedule going into the work week, obviously you're going to want to keep an eye on that and make sure it's running as efficiently as possible. And then you're going to want to report on what's going on as well. So there's a couple of different things you're going to report on. As far as your labor metrics, your efficiency, are we running efficiently? Are we not? The biggest thing that a workforce planning reports on is overtime, though. In the United States, businesses are required to pay time and a half to every employee for every hour worked over 40 hours a week. So the easiest example I can give of this is, if you have an employee who works 50 hours a week, maybe it would have been a wiser move to hire 2 part-timers instead of that one full-timer who's working overtime. One person works 20 hours, the other works 30, or they both work 25 and 25. You've already cut out that half hour of pay from the overtime just by having 2 part-timers, and you got 2 extra bodies. So if needed, you can run them the extra 10 hours without them going into overtime. So it's all about finding that balance. How many full-timers, how many part-timers do you want? How do we reduce the overtime expense? All of this plays into workforce planning. So in conclusion, with all of that, you can see how the systematic planning of your workforce can have an overwhelmingly positive impact on your business's success. The most important thing to me, as somebody who's worked in this field for a year, is what I've seen workforce planning does is that rather than look at employees as dollars and cents, where if we work more employees, it's going to cost us more money, you're looking at them as people and what they bring to you and what you could do for them. It's people and productivity rather than dollars and cents. So you are acknowledging people for what they're capable of, what they bring to the table. They appreciate that, and they in turn respect you a little bit more for it. It builds morale in your business, and it could save you money. All in all, workforce planning is just a great benefit to a business. So thank you. Enjoy.